learning skills on the inside that will give them a leg up on the outside.
We think that people forgot about us, and that's not the case at all.
And we dig into the KGW vault 24 years after the floods of '96.
These should normally be streets, not rivers, not canals, but streets.
Here's the story.
And welcome to The Story. I am Dan Haggerty. Thanks for being with us. I hope you're having a fantastic Monday. We are. And I think we just got a little bit of breaking news to give you right now, because no one's having a better one than the Ducks women. They just beat UConn in Connecticut 74-56. This is huge. UConn's first loss at home in 7 years and the most points they have ever been beaten by at home. These Ducks women are not messing around this year. Congrats to them. All right, let's get things going here on The Story. This is our new show here at 6 o'clock on KGW. We want you to reach out to us, interact with us, use the hashtag HeyDan, get in touch with us on Facebook or Instagram. Smoke signals, use a carrier pigeon, just put it on its foot and go like that. We'll get it, don't worry. We are going to start things off tonight, though, by breaking one of our own rules. Yeah, it's only our second week here on the air, and we're already going back on the tenets of the show, but hear me out. We told you when we started things off here on the story that we weren't going to be covering all the fires and the shootings and the car crashes. There are millions of places right here in town giving you that information, like the rest of KGW, for instance. But this morning, we were in our editorial meeting. We're talking about what we're going to do today. We learned that there have been 61 shootings in Portland since the start of the year. We thought, man, that seems like a lot. And we were right. It is. It's almost twice as many as we saw this time last year. 36 so far in 2019 at this point. We put this map together here. It illustrates kind of where and when these shootings happen. Keep in mind, though, this map, it's old already. It only goes up to January 23rd, so it's already outdated just a few days after that. Portland police, they're blaming most of the shootings on a small group of people. They say Portland is still a very safe place. And to fight back, PPB is rolling out some serious hardware. I have one of them right here in my pocket. Door hangers.
This is by no means the gun violence reduction strategy for the city. This is just one small thing we're doing to help empower our community to offer assistance.
Yes, we did ask what else they're doing besides this. He didn't go into detail. Listen, we want to be fair. Gun violence is not an easy thing to solve. If it was, it would be solved tonight. It is not. So PPB is doing what they can, and we applaud them for all that hard work. I also think that we know door hangers aren't going to magically solve any problems. Now, let's get to the big story tonight. So many bills, so little time. That's shaping up to be the theme of this year's legislative session in Salem. Today being day one of a 35-day short session. On odd-numbered years, the sessions are longer, around 6 months. But this is 2020, so that means our leaders will have just over a month to try and get some work done. And that includes Cap and Trade 2.0. And we all know how well that went last year. All right, let's bring in a guy who I think knows a little bit more about all of this than, well, more about it than I know. More about it, I think, anybody else here in the building does. It's our political expert, Len Bergstein. Thanks for joining us today, sir. Let me grab my notes here. Good to see you, too. So we want to talk about what we think are kind of the 5 key pieces of legislation we're going to see as we move through the next 35 days or so, starting with natural protection, resource protection, more specifically wildfire reduction and recovery, which is something the governor's passionate about.
Yeah, wildfires were a big story up and down the West Coast. So you'd expect that the legislature and the governor would want to take a whack at kind of preventing and helping the state recover. So there's money in the governor's budget, hopefully, to be able to go at upgrading the forest practices. There's money for demonstration projects, and hopefully there'll be some regulations of utilities so that, in fact, we won't have the same problem here where a utility sparks a fire as it did in California.
So we're seeing more about housing and homelessness, right? We see this almost every year. This is always a discussion point of people here in Oregon. What's different this year?
Here's a situation where the Speaker of the House and the governor are in lockstep on this. The Speaker wants us to declare an emergency in the state so that, in fact, that would allow local jurisdictions to have more tools and an easier chance to build more housing and shelters. She also wants to put a chunk of money into the budget so that, in fact, we could build shelters and what they call navigation centers, like what we have here in the Portland area. The governor says, let's go one step further. Let's try and really put some money in there and find a tax, a resource for this. And she's talking about a real estate transfer tax so that, in fact, it would create a pot of money that you could build affordable housing. So there's a bunch of different efforts to do this. Some people have said, hey, look, our land use laws need to be changed a little bit and allow expansion of the urban growth boundaries for affordable housing. So there'll be 3 or 4 different approaches.
Oh, let's talk about vaping. Wow, that's been something that grabbed headlines I didn't expect for the past year. I don't think anybody did, but we're talking about some legislation now.
That's right. Well, the governor tried to do this with an executive order. She tried to stop, put a ban on those materials. Those were overturned. So she's come back. And also one of the state senators, Lori Monis Anderson, who happens to be a chair of a Senate Health Committee and also a nurse, has tremendously strong feelings about this. So there's an attempt to, on the Senate side of the legislature, to try and ban certain kinds of nicotine products, delivery systems. And on the House side, they're talking about ban of sales through internet and mail and so on and so forth. So it'll be a big topic this session.
Now, always controversial, gun control bill, though this is more about storage and how people store their guns. Talk about that one.
It actually was one of the things that fell apart during the last session, in part because of the cap and trade walkout. And so, in fact, the gun safety advocates think that this is a common sense approach. Let's put guns that people own legitimately behind locks so that in fact kids and others can't get their hands at them. Obviously there'll be, as you say, pushback on this because gun rights folks say, you're touching my right to have my gun the way I want to have it without any restrictions. So it'll be a controversial issue, but I think the momentum is on the side of a gun safety piece of legislation this session.
You mentioned cap and trade off the top. This is something our viewers have been asking a lot of questions about using the hashtag #HeyDan, and it's something we've been trying to educate them on, or at least tell them what we know so far as we go into this. We saw the walkout with cap and trade last year. It was messy. We had empty chairs in the legislature. We saw protests outside of the Capitol. Talk about what we can expect now moving forward. It sounds like walkout 2.0, not just cap and trade 2.0.
Well, you've got that right. I mean, it's a controversial issue because each side thinks that their base voters, the people who send them to Salem, support the position they're at and want them to be vigorous. So the Democrats say we want to have something that we've been working on for well over a decade, and we think that this is it's an issue that is the most significant one they feel in the history of our lives. So let's go after cap and trade. Republicans say you're going to pass some legislation that's going to have a disproportionate impact on rural communities. So the governor and the legislators have been trying to kind of like remove all of those onerous impacts and try and solve the problems in order to kind of get to a solution. We'll have 3 big sets of hearings: Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday this week, and a big demonstration on Thursday against the bill.
So cap and trade is coming in hot, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's getting ready to go. And you mentioned how the gun storage bill stalled because of the walkout last time. Could cap and trade, could another potential walkout be detrimental to all the other things we just talked about?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And there's a whole long list of things that could fall out. Once you lose the quorum and you can't convene your legislature, if a certain number of Republicans walk out, so there's not enough people in the building to conduct business, then that just brings everything to a halt. There was no penalty last time. In other words, the Republicans didn't feel like they really got chastised. So the only thing that the Democrats can say is, we're going to push this as hard as we can and force you to pay at the ballot box if you don't do your job.
Len, thank you. Listen, if you have questions for us here at The Story, use hashtag #HeyDan. I have Len's cell phone number and his email, which he probably regrets giving to me, but I'm happy to pass those questions on to him. I bug him with them all the time. Len, thank you, sir.
Good to talk to you. Yeah.
Now, a lot of you have a lot to say about the possibility of another walkout. Ken Miller tweeted with me using the hashtag #HeyDan, saying that he thinks Republicans will walk out again, and if they do, they should be removed from office. He says they'd be skipping out on doing their job. Now, we know some of you probably agree with Ken. Some of you probably don't agree with Ken. Let me know what you think. Use Facebook, use Twitter, talk to us. We can't tell you that there are 2 unions who definitely agree with Ken, and they want to punish lawmakers if they don't show up. They're trying to get 2 initiatives on the ballot. The first would let lawmakers kick someone out if they don't attend 10 session days in a row and they don't have a good excuse for missing, like a medical issue or something. It would also disqualify them from being reelected. The second initiative would fine lawmakers $500 a day for every unexcused absence and would also dock their pay. Now, these things need a lot of signatures, like more than 100,000 right now. Then they would be placed on the ballot. So we would vote on this, the voters here, in November. So just to keep this in mind, neither of these punishments would apply if Republicans decide to walk out this session. We can't tell you that one of the bills in this short session would get rid of the short session. It's mostly sponsored by Republicans. They don't want to meet once every year. They want to go back to meeting every 2 years. So how did we get here?
Oregon's short session is relatively new. For most of the state's history, the legislature only met every 2 years. Why? Well, back in the 1800s, it could take days for all the lawmakers to just get to Salem. You know, covered wagons and all that. And who wants to make that trip every year? By 2010, a lot of people were thinking that was outdated. Plus, Oregon was growing, had lots of complicated bills and budgets to deal with. So, in 2012, voters approved of lawmakers meeting every year. On odd-numbered years, they'd meet for the long sessions, lasting more than 5 months. And on even-numbered years, they'd meet for the short session, just 35 days, like the one we're in now. Currently, some lawmakers, mostly Republicans, say the short session should just be for the budget and tweaking bills from the previous year, and the Democrats are trying to cram through complicated legislation. But the Democrats argue these bills are important and can't be ignored until next year. And that's how we got here. So the short session, 35 days, is really even more of a rush when you think about all of the factors and other deadlines that are all along the way. Bills will constantly be dying in committee if they aren't voted on soon enough. If you have questions about any of these bills, I know we kind of just threw a lot at you right there about the process or anything, let me know. Use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter or leave a comment on my Facebook page. When the story continues.
I feel like a caged animal. This is not a comfortable place for me.
We go inside Oregon's only women's prison to show you this program that's changing people's lives without costing you a penny.
And how to treat each other with respect and how to work together.
And a look back into the KGW vault, 24 years after the floods in '96.
You will have our help, I assure you of that, in the job of cleaning up and rebuilding.
We've been working on this next story for more than a year. It's about these 3 women. One is a mom who dreams of changing the criminal justice system. Another wants to teach kids outdoor survival skills. All 3 were sentenced to years in prison for crimes tied to drugs, fraud, even one violent case of arson. Tonight, Maggie Vespa begins a 3-part series about a program that's helping these women get out of prison and stay out. We begin by meeting our 3 participants and learning their stories.
Hi. Good morning.
I'm excited. Excited, maybe a little bit nervous.
Should we do funny faces? No.
You're watching the crossing of a major finish line.
Hi.
The hugs, the relief, took months of work.
It does not feel like it's been 9, right? Yeah.
Now, a rare chance to celebrate.
Congratulations.
Because this is graduation day.
I'm very grateful for each one of you ladies. You're all very inspiring.
These 29 women are sitting on a small stage in front of a crowd.
But this kind of gives me a map so that I can see where I'm going.
They've spent 8 months developing plans. One, to start a small business. Another, to rebuild their lives. Something they can act on once they're finally free. Welcome to the only women's prison in the state of Oregon. Population 1,087, including Oregon's only woman on death row.
You'll just look at me and talk to me.
Hello. Most here serve out their sentences in medium and minimum security facilities.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So I'll be sitting there and you'll be looking at me and talking to me the whole time.
Good. I don't want to be looking.
No.
Meet 3.
Hi, my name is Mariah Williams.
I'm Amy. I'm from Salem.
My name is Vanessa Sherrod. I am 38, going to be 39. During a time that I didn't know how to cope with my daughter fighting cancer, I turned to prescription medication that I was being prescribed as a coping mechanism.
Vanessa has 3 kids. Her youngest was 4 when she was diagnosed with cancer.
Sorry, it gets hard to talk about this.
Around the same time, Vanessa was in a car accident, which injured her back. A few months later, she had to have her gallbladder removed. A doctor prescribed oxycodone for the pain, but Vanessa became addicted, and soon she was using the pills to cope with everything.
I felt like if I didn't have them, I feel like I would die, is exactly what it would feel like. So when it came to like stealing or making, decisions to commit crime, it was like, it was a given, like I couldn't die, like that's exactly what it felt like.
By spring 2015, Vanessa was writing up rental contracts as a landlord. Problem was, those contracts were for properties she didn't own. It was a scam.
Would meet with them and sign up a rental contract from the rental property, and then they would not, they didn't get the property when the time came.
Vanessa took deposits and disappeared. She also stole merchandise from a local Lowe's and tried to return it for cash. She says her addiction and the grief over her daughter's cancer turned her into someone she doesn't recognize.
It's not something easy to deal with to watch your daughter go through that. And it's no excuse for where my life, fell into criminal activity and addiction that I couldn't control, but it helped me get through it.
We just went through some marriage problems. We were on the verge of divorce. He started using drugs, then offered it to me. I started doing drugs too, and our lives just spun out of control. He's in prison now too.
At first, Amy Lorenzo didn't know her husband was using meth. Looking back, there were signs.
It's like not coming home. I would sit with my kids at night while they were crying, just wanted their dad. He'd say he'd be there in a few minutes. He wouldn't show up.
Eventually, the mom of 3 started using too. She'd been working as a heavy equipment operator on a paving crew, but that salary wasn't enough to keep her high.
To steal a car one day, or steal things from a store another day, or go into a bank and cash a check, whatever I had to do to feed my addiction.
Those checks she's talking about were fraudulent. Amy cashed them at a local U.S. bank.
I did it a couple of different times. One time it was like $3,000. The other time it looked like a payroll check is what it looked like.
Amy is now sober. And like Vanessa, she thinks about her addiction and what she did to fuel it every day.
I feel like a caged animal. I've been cut off from everything in the outside pretty much, mostly my kids. Interaction with my kids is the thing that's the worst about being in here.
So a few nights after I got back from Alaska, I went to a bar and I was invited to a house from people that I didn't know.
Back in Portland, after visiting relatives, Mariah went to that house party where she remembers people getting into a fight. Court documents say it was over cocaine. Mariah was beaten up.
And so we left this apartment and we go to the gas station and there was gas that was picked up. We went back to the apartment and the stairs were set on fire.
Investigators said 3 adults and 2 kids escaped that fire, but 2 of the adults were burned. Mariah pleaded guilty. It was her first run-in with the law.
I had always gone to school and I've always had a job and I was raised by a really good family, so it's hard for me to connect with a lot of people here.
By the time she's out, she'll have spent half her adult life in prison.
That's a lot of time. That's a big chunk of my life. And considering that I wasn't going around committing crimes prior to this incident that happened. It was a life-changing experience for me.
Mariah, Amy, and Vanessa had never told their stories on camera before.
To participate, we would have to just like be honest about what happened.
They were nervous.
Okay.
But they were open.
Is that going to be a thing if you guys put this on the news? No. Okay, okay.
Over months, I sat down with these women again and again to check in on their progress and to get to know them as people.
What was going on last month health-wise?
Oh, I had a surgery on my foot. Yeah, but it's healed tremendously.
We watched as they prepared to get out.
Can we do that? Come back.
And as they built a plan to help them stay out.
Lots of things to do today, yes? All right.
I'm not coming back here. I do not like it here. This is not a comfortable place for me.
Okay, that is the first of a three-part series you'll be seeing right here on The Story. Maggie Vespa joining us now. This has been more than a year of your life covering.
This is the longest story I've ever worked on. Mila Mamitsa, our executive producer, brought this to me in October of 2018, and that's when we started doing research on this. So again, it's a three-part series. We have a lot to cover over the next couple of nights, so we're going to dive more deeply into the program. But in the meantime, check out KGW.com. We've already got the story up, and you can see, again, more about the LIFE program, learn more about the women that we profiled. There's Vanessa right there. They shared their life stories and their plans for the future, and we want to cover all of it, and we will.
Yeah, and if you have questions about the coverage, reach out using the hashtag #HeyDan. Maggie, thank you.
Sure.
When the story continues, we head back into the KGW vault.
And now it is at least knee-deep for about a 2-block area.
The good we found years after a very bad day in Oregon.
Come on with us on a trip back to the KGW vault. 24 years after the historic flooding of 1996. It was a winter filled with snow and ice and immediately followed by lots of warm rain, and it led to what you're seeing on your screen. The Willamette rose to 28 feet, 10 feet over flood levels. Oaks Park flooded. Water was knee-deep in downtown Lake O. Mudslides covered freeways, and 8 people died. But we noticed something else digging through all of this archive video today, and that's all the good our community did for each other.
This is where the problem was today, so we thought we'd come up and help for a while.
Everybody's pitching in.
Oh, they're angels. They're just angels from God.
Well, I had the day off, and my wife told me to get off the couch and come help.
Are you doing a good job? Good, that a boy.
We all understand that we all need each other's help, and I'm glad that the community's decided to help each other out.
Rather, it touches your heart when you see the number of people down here that are helping out. They're either hammering, shoveling, digging ditches, or feeding the people who are working. It's very impressive. And I know the people from the city that I've talked to have been just as touched in their heart and just as impressed with the effort down here.
And I hope that all of us will find in our minds and hearts the wisdom and strength to be a little more like the people of Portland were on that one day, every day of the year.
If there's something you'd like to see from the KGW vault, it's very simple. Just let us know. Use the hashtag #HeyDan. We've got some of your comments when we come back and finish the story. I think the comments are really telling tonight. You know, we do a half-hour story, and everybody's talking about the walkout and what should happen to lawmakers as we wait to see what happens with Cap and Trade 2.0. We have Jeannie saying, if I walked off my job, I'd pay the price. What about lawmakers? Then you hear people writing into the live stream saying nothing should happen to them because they feel like the Republicans are speaking up for the people in their neck of the woods. Dan saying, if they walk out, vote them out. Of course, that's always an option. I know the start of the short session just began, but it's going to be a long one, and we'll have it all for you right here on The Story.